Have you ever lost respect after losing your temper? Have you noticed how people stop taking you seriously the moment you explode? The problem we're solving today is simple. How do you maintain power and authority without letting emotions control you? And Machiavelli had the answer centuries ago. Imagine this. You're in an argument. The other person expects you to explode with anger, but instead you stay calm, composed and unshaken. Suddenly, they don't feel powerful anymore. They feel uneasy. Today, we uncover one of Machiavelli's most subtle tricks. Never show anger, because calmness makes others fear you. Have you ever noticed how quickly respect can vanish the moment you lose your temper? Think about it. 1 second, people might see you as strong, composed, maybe even intimidating. But the moment you explode in anger, something shifts. Suddenly, they don't see power anymore. They see vulnerability. They see someone who's not in control of themselves. And if you can't control yourself, how can you possibly control others? This is why Machiavelli, countless other observers of power, understood a simple truth. Anger makes you weak. Not because anger itself isn't a powerful emotion, but because showing it reveals too much. It shows that someone else has managed to get under your skin. It shows that they've discovered a lever that can move you. And in politics, in business, in relationships, once someone knows your levers, you're no longer the one in charge. Let me give you a picture. Imagine two people in a heated negotiation. One slams their fist on the table, raises their voice, their face turns red. The other just sits back calm, maybe even silent. Which one looks like they're losing? Which one looks like they're begging to be taken seriously? Exactly, the angry one. Because anger, no matter how loud or dramatic, always sends the same message. I'm not in control right now. And people respect control far more than they respect emotion. Throughout history, great leaders learned this the hard way. Anger might feel like strength in the moment, like fire surging through your body, but it betrays you. It's like showing the enemy the exact place where your armor is thin. Every time you lash out, every time you shout, every time you let your temper dictate your actions, you hand over the keys to your power. Others now know, if I want to weaken him, all I have to do is provoke him. And isn't that true in everyday life? Think about the last time someone provoked you. Maybe it was a coworker who made a snide remark in a meeting. Maybe it was a stranger who cut you off in traffic. Or maybe it was someone close to you who knew exactly what words would push your buttons. The moment you snapped, who really won? Or did it just show the other person that they could control you with a simple word, a small gesture, a calculated move? Even Machiavelli himself wrote about this dynamic. He explained that rulers who gave in to anger were seen as unstable, unpredictable in the worst way. Their enemies studied them, waiting for those outbursts, because those were the moments when mistakes were made, when opportunities appeared. And so, anger didn't just make them look weak, it made them vulnerable to real dangers. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Sometimes anger feels justified. Sometimes it feels like the only way to show strength. But here's the twist. What you think is strength, others interpret as desperation. What you feel as righteous fury, others see as a loss of composure. And once people see you lose composure, they never forget it. They store that moment away and they know, from then on, that you can be broken. That's the danger of anger. It doesn't just hurt you in the moment. It reshapes how people view you permanently. A boss who screams at his team may think he's asserting authority, but in truth, he's teaching his employees that his emotions control him. A partner who erupts during an argument may believe they're winning the fight, but in reality, they're signaling that they can't handle conflict without losing balance. Anger is a great illusion of power. It feels like a weapon, but in reality, it's a wound you open on yourself. The strongest people you've ever met, the ones you quietly respect, maybe even fear a little, are rarely the ones who shout the loudest. They're the ones who hold back. They're the ones who don't give you the reaction you're looking for. Because silence, composure, and control are far scarier than any outburst. Anger is predictable. Calmness is not. And when you show anger, you become transparent. People know what you're feeling. They know exactly where to press next time. So remember, anger doesn't make you feared. It makes you exposed. It strips away your mystery, your authority or power. When you show anger, you're telling the world, here's my weakness. Here's how you can control me. And once that secret is out, it can never be taken back. Picture this. You're in the middle of a heated argument. The other person is raising their voice, throwing insults, trying to get a reaction out of you. But you don't move. You don't shout. You don't even flinch. You just stay calm, collected and steady. What happens next? They get nervous. They get frustrated. They even get a little afraid. Because nothing scares people more than someone who refuses to lose control. Calmness is often mistaken for passivity, but in reality, it's one of the most powerful tools you can use to influence how others see you. When you stay calm, you project strength. You project certainty. And certainty makes people uneasy because it means you're operating from a place they can't touch. Think about the last time you saw someone completely composed in a stressful situation. Maybe it was a coworker who stayed cool when everyone else was panicking. Maybe it was a teacher, parent, or even a stranger who never raised their voice no matter what was happening. Weren't you a little impressed? Didn't you feel something shift in the room? Like this person was suddenly in control, even without saying much at all. That's the hidden effect of calmness. It establishes dominance without needing to announce it. Psychologists have long known that humans are wired to respond to emotional cues. When someone shouts, we feel pressure to shout back. When someone panics, we feel the urge to panic too. But when someone refuses to be pulled into that emotional storm, they break the script. Suddenly, the person trying to provoke them feels like they're performing to an audience that won't clap. And that silence, that lack of reaction becomes unbearable. That's where fear creeps in. Because calmness in the face of conflict is unnatural. Most people can't do it. So when you manage to stay calm while someone else is losing themselves, they start asking questions in their head. Why isn't he reacting? What is he planning? What does she know that I don't passion? That uncertainty gnaws at them. They realize they don't have control of the situation anymore. And that realization makes them uneasy, even fearful. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He saw rulers who could stand in the middle of chaos and maintain a straight face. They didn't scream. They didn't rage. They simply observed. And people around them, subjects, rivals, even allies, began to whisper. They wondered if these rulers were plotting something darker, something bigger. Their calmness was not seen as weakness. It was seen as calculation. And when people believe you are calculating, they respect you. They tread carefully around you. They fear crossing you. Let's bring it closer to everyday life. Imagine you're at work and your boss publicly criticizes you. Everyone expects you to defend yourself, maybe get defensive, maybe even argue back. But instead you stay calm. You acknowledge the words, but you don't let your emotions spill out. The boss looks like the one losing control. The onlookers shift their perspective. They see you as composed, even powerful. Because staying calm under fire is something most people can't do. Calmness has another hidden effect. It creates mystery. Anger tells people exactly how you feel. Excitement tells people exactly what you want. But calmness keeps them guessing. They can't read you, and when people can't read you, they don't know how to approach. That uncertainty forces them to respect boundaries they might otherwise cross. Calmness in this sense becomes a shield. It protects your intentions, your strategies, your emotions. Think of a poker game. The player who slams their chips down, who sighs and groans, who makes faces when they get a bad hand. Everyone at the table reads them instantly. They become predictable, easy to beat. But the player who stays calm, who never flinches, who never reveals anything, suddenly they're dangerous. You don't know if they're bluffing or holding a winning hand. You don't know how to counter them. And that's exactly why you tread carefully around them. That's the same dynamic in life. Calmness keeps people on edge. It prevents them from knowing your next move. It unsettles them because human beings are addicted to control. When they can't control your emotions, when they can't predict your reactions, they feel powerless. And when people feel powerless around you, they start to fear you, quietly, maybe even unconsciously, but the effect is real. So when chaos surrounds you, when someone tries to provoke you, remember the power of calmness. Don't give them the reaction they crave. Don't reveal your emotions. Because every second you stay calm while they lose control, you're teaching them a lesson they won't forget. Your silence is stronger than their noise, and your composure is a kind of power they can't touch. Let me take you back to Renaissance Italy, a time when power was fragile, betrayal was everywhere, and rulers lived in constant fear of being overthrown. In this world, Niccolo Machiavelli studied the movements of kings, popes, generals, and princes, and from these observations he wrote something shocking. If you want to hold on to power, you must not simply be strong. You must be strategic. You must know when to conceal, when to reveal, and most importantly, when to hide your emotions. Machiavelli believed that rulers who showed too much of themselves were destined to lose. Why? Because once people could predict your reactions, they could control you. He argued that the successful ruler had to appear calm, rational, even cold at times, not because they lacked feelings, but because their survival depended on keeping others off balance. Think about that for a second. Most of us believe authenticity means showing what we feel. We think honesty in every situation is a virtue, but Machiavelli saw it differently. To him, honesty with your emotions was a dangerous luxury for anyone in power. If a rival knew you angered easily, they could provoke you. If they knew you loved flattery, they could manipulate you. If they knew your fears, they could weaponize them. The more of yourself you show, the more weapons you hand to your enemies. So his strategy was simple but radical. Conceal, project calmness, control the stage, let others wonder what you are truly thinking, what you are truly feeling. Because when they wonder, they hesitate. And when they hesitate, you win. Let me give you an example. Imagine a prince sitting in council. His advisors are shouting, debating, trying to sway his decision. One of them grows angry, pounds the table, demands action. Another begs, pleads, appeals to his compassion. But the prince, he doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't reveal if he agrees or disagrees. He just listens. Maybe he nods. Maybe he says nothing at all. What happens in that room? The advisors start second-guessing themselves. They start worrying. What is he really thinking? Did I say too much? Did I go too far? Suddenly, the prince is in control without lifting a finger. That's Machiavelli's strategy in action. Machiavelli even warned rulers about the dangers of being loved too much. He said that love is fragile, it can vanish the moment things go wrong. Fear, on the other hand, is reliable. People fear losing their safety, they comfort their position. And calmness, when used properly, breeds fear more effectively than anger ever could. A calm ruler is unpredictable. He might punish, he might forgive, and because no one can read him, no one risks testing him. Think about how this applies outside of politics. In your workplace, if you constantly show your frustrations, your team or colleagues know exactly how to push your buttons. But if you respond strategically, keeping calm and reveal little, people begin to respect you differently. They measure their words around you. They don't take liberties. Because they're never quite sure where they stand with you, and that uncertainty gives you an edge. Machiavelli's writings, especially in The Prince, were criticized in his time for being ruthless. Some even called him immoral. But strip away the judgment, and what remains is a manual for survival in a dangerous world. His strategy was not about cruelty for cruelty's sake. It was about control. A ruler who shouted in anger lost control. A ruler who showed mercy too openly lost control. But a ruler who stayed calm, calculated, and unreadable, that was a ruler who survived. And isn't survival what we all seek in our own way? Maybe not survival against assassins or coups, but survival in our careers, our relationships, our social lives. Every time you walk into a negotiation, every time you handle conflict, every time you're being tested, you're living out a smaller version of what Machiavelli saw in the courts of Italy. The rules haven't changed. The faces have, the weapons have. But the psychology of power remains the same. So what does Machiavelli's strategy teach us? That real power lies not in showing strength, but in showing restraint. That silence can be louder than shouting. That calmness can carry more authority than force. And that the one who keeps emotions hidden, measured, and controlled will always hold the upper hand in a world where everyone else is reacting. The brilliance of Machiavelli's strategy is that it works on every level. It works for rulers of nations. It works for leaders of companies. And it works for individuals navigating everyday life. Because no matter the time or place, human nature is consistent. People fear what they can't predict. They respect what they can't easily read. And they follow those who project calmness even in the storm. It's one thing to talk about theories of power. It's another to live them out in real life. And that's the challenge most people face. They hear about the dangers of anger, the strength of calmness, Machiavelli's warnings, and they think, that sounds great. But how do I actually do this in my daily life? That's where the real work begins, because it's not about pretending to be calm. It's about training yourself to embody calmness until it becomes second nature. The first application begins with self-awareness. Most people don't even realize when they're about to lose control. The heart rate rises, the palms sweat, the voice sharpens, and before they know it, the anger is out and the damage is done. So the first step is noticing these signs as they happen. Machiavelli would say that the wise leader knows himself better than his enemies ever could. And in modern life, that means recognizing your triggers before they control you. Imagine you're in a meeting and someone interrupts you, dismissing your point. Instinctively, you want to fire back, to show you won't be disrespected. But here's the trick pause. Let silence fill the air. That silence alone will unsettle the interrupter far more than an angry response ever would. And when you do speak, your words land with more weight because they're delivered with calm precision instead of raw emotion. That's practical power. Another application lies in negotiations. Negotiation is essentially a battle of nerves. Most people cave when the pressure mounts. They show frustration. They rush to fill the silence. They reveal what they're really thinking. But the one who stays calm, who allows the silence to linger, who never shows urgency, always has the upper hand. That's because urgency signals weakness. Calmness signals confidence, and confidence in negotiation often decides the outcome more than the actual facts on the table. Think about personal relationships too. How many arguments spiral out of control because both sides let anger lead the conversation? But when one person refuses to escalate, when they stay calm, it forces the other side to confront their own behavior. Sometimes it even makes them back down. Because yelling at someone who won't yell back makes you look small, emotional, and unstable. Calmness in this context is not passivity. It's dominance. There's a story often told about a general who faced mutiny within his ranks. His officers stormed into his tent shouting, demanding changes, some even threatening violence. But the general never raised his voice. He stood up slowly, walked to the center, and just looked at each of them, one by one, without speaking. The shouting died down. The tension shifted. Suddenly, the officers realized they weren't in control of the room anymore. That single act of calmness saved the general's command. And centuries later, the lesson is just as relevant. Calm presence has the power to turn chaos into order. So how do you train yourself to apply this in everyday life? Start with discipline. Practice not reacting right away. When something provokes you, force yourself to wait. Count to 5. Breathe with it. Let the urge to react pass before you say anything. The tiny delay can be the difference between handing over your power and keeping it. People expect instant reactions. When you don't give them one, you break their rhythm, and that alone gives you control. Another method is to cultivate stillness. Not just physical stillness, but emotional stillness. Train yourself to stay centered when stress builds around you. Meditation, deep breathing, even small routines that slow down your thoughts. These are tools to practice calmness when the stakes are low, so that when the stakes are high, calmness is your default state. Machiavelli's rulers didn't just stumble into composure. They prepared for it, sharpened it, turned it into a weapon. And don't underestimate the power of body language. Calmness isn't just in your words, it's in how you carry yourself. Slow movement, steady eye contact, controlled posture. All of these amplify your authority. A person who thrashes, fidgets, or rushes looks nervous even if they're not. But someone who moves deliberately, who pauses before speaking, who looks at others without blinking, projects power before a single word is said. This is why calmness creates fear, and this is why Machiavelli emphasized it as strategy. Because when people cannot read you, when they cannot provoke you, when they cannot rush you, they feel the limits of their own power. And in that moment, you become untouchable. So in practice, every conflict, every negotiation, every argument, and every test of patience an opportunity to sharpen this skill. Don't think of calmness as inaction. Think of it as controlled action. Every time you resist the urge to lash out, every time you pause instead of explode, every time you respond with composure instead of rage, you're conditioning others to see you as someone not to be underestimated. Someone they cannot easily move, someone they must respect. We've walked through the dangers of anger, the hidden strength of calmness, Machiavelli's ruthless strategy, and the ways you can apply it in your own life. What ties it all together is simple. Control. The one who controls themselves controls the room. The one who controls the room controls the outcome. And in every conflict, every negotiation, every test of power, that's the difference between being respected and being dismissed. Never forget, anger is a gift you hand to your enemies. Calmness is a weapon you keep for yourself. When you explode, you reveal your weakness. When you stay composed, you leave others guessing. And when people have to guess, they hesitate. That hesitation is your advantage. Hesitation is your power. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago, but it's just as true today. Leaders, professionals, parents, friends, anyone who can master their emotions commands an authority that others can't touch. The trick is not to eliminate your feelings, but to discipline them, to channel them, to never let them betray you. So the lesson is clear. In moments of pressure, in moments of conflict, in moments when the world is watching, don't show anger, show control. Because calmness doesn't just earn respect. Calmness makes people fear crossing you, and that fear is the quiet crown of power.